Welcome back to Earth Chronicles, Book 1, The Fifth Pinnacle. Chapter 22, 1896, The Beginning of Progress. Sometimes the thing we want and value the greatest in life is the thing that disappoints us the most. The inner workings of the brain were like this for Angela. She asserted that two of its intangible gifts, imagination and the ability to reason, would someday help her unlock the secret to endless life without regeneration. Her education and subsequent understanding of the brain had always played a huge role in her thinking. Due to this, it proved difficult to impress her, even when she was given a new and improved body. Most regenerated ones considered it a miracle, but not Angela. She was disinclined to believe that way. However, she did believe it to be a remarkable feat. After 35 years of working with James, she surmised it inexcusable that she hadn't discovered the reason for the formula's success. She had two regenerated ones who had attended college, working with her for the past couple of years. Still, there were few with whom she could discuss the brain, and still fewer, if any, could discuss it on her level. She now felt a burden more powerful than when she had first arrived in Tallahassee amid the country's spiraling civil unrest. She had reached that all-encompassing point of throwing in the towel, of waving the white flag, of giving up her suddenly dilapidated, broken-down efforts. She was hoping that the immense tide surrounding Florida would flood over into the rivers of Tallahassee, bringing with it new and enlivening prospects. Or if nothing more, that it would usher into her life the sort of energy that had at one time distinguished her. That morning James sat sipping coffee, his eyes wandering up and down the columns of the daily newspaper. The sunshine glistened pleasantly, flooding in through the kitchen windows, showing off the glossy oak tabletop he was relaxing at. He was content to be lazy this morning. As such, he was sinking almost out of sight behind the newspaper. With no conception of what was taking place outside the wooden house, he hears the loud and earthy sentiments of one Angela Renee Gall. I'm not convinced any longer that I withdrew to a better world when I came here. She excitedly and hurriedly comes walking, if it can be called that, into the room. I'm quite sure there's no danger of earthquakes like there are up north. But by God, I just heard of a man who was eaten by an alligator. James peeks his eyes over his newspaper. But, Angela, you knew there would be dangers here before you came. The Indian wars were over by then, but indigenous creatures like the alligator were here in abundance. A few years ago, we even went to see a man who wrestles with them in a show. And, if you recall, he made out fine. No matter where you live, there will always be dangers. I believe you were fleeing from war when you came here. Am I right? She steps closer to the table, then even closer until she's touching it with her legs. She places both hands palm down on its surface. Yes, and I do hate it when you talk logically to me. Out of her peripheral vision, she notices Grace smiling, wiping her hands on an apron, and shaking her head in amusement. I mean, sometimes I hate it. You mean when it doesn't suit your fancy? Grace interjects, smiling again. Of course. James crumples his paper in a little, then straightens it back out. You've never been a prisoner to Tallahassee. You can leave at your own desire. It's always been that way. Is it what you wish after all these years? No, James, it's not. And I didn't mean to sound ungrateful. What I wish is to start making progress with our research. What I wish I could do now is eliminate this feeling of failure. I never expected to fail. I see. He lowers the paper, revealing his whole face. Angela, have you not heard technology is taking off like a soaring bird? In Chicago and New York, they are in the middle of putting buildings up as high as they please. 40, 50, even 60 stories high. So high they're calling them skyscrapers. And here, look at this picture. He turns the newspaper, facing in her direction. See this man. Can you make him out? Yes, James. His name is George Washington Vanderbilt. A year ago, he opened the largest privately owned house in the United States. He flips through the paper until it rests on another page. Look, see the picture. It has nearly 180,000 square feet, and a place this large has electric lighting and indoor plumbing with toilets and bathing rooms for all the guests and house staff. It's a marvel to be sure, but what are you getting at? If such a grand place as this can be built in the wilderness of North Carolina, then, my dear, we can be sure that technology is becoming completely unharnessed. He drops the paper into his lap. I think we need to get up on its bandwagon. And James, How do you propose we do that? I think it's time we build a new research facility. But we already have one, and it's probably more than we need. It's 1,200 square feet and has absolutely nothing to spur the imagination. It's no wonder we can't make a breakthrough. We've fallen years behind the world's developments. That stops today. We must dedicate ourselves to never letting it happen again. Go on, James. I'm listening. Grace wipes her hand again on the apron, this time vigorously. She lets it fall, walks over to the table, and sits next to James. Yes, James, go on. I'm listening too. Well, all right then. First, we'll start with a 5,000 square foot building. We'll fill it with all the latest contraptions and gadgets there are to study. Grace leans in, touching her face to his shoulder. But our work is secret. Who's going to man a building that large? That's an excellent question, Grace. And I'm sure Angela is wondering the same thing. It will take some time, of course. But for years now, we've had regenerated ones working in the government. Some of those are in the Secret Service, the highest branch of security. We just need to solicit their help. We bring them aboard and keep recruiting more. I'll appoint a recruiting coordinator to find the brightest minds. We can keep our research confidential because it'll be under the guise of government security. It's the perfect front. I already rent out buildings to the state and federals. So, this won't bring any unwanted attention. Angela, until we get someone to coordinate the recruiting, you can get to work on a list of excellent old persons with the right kind of education and background. When the time's right, we can regenerate them and bring them onto the project. I also want to put together a research team just for technology. I want this facility to be on the cutting edge. It has to be if we're to ever succeed. Angela pulls out a chair and sits down on the other side of James. She's looking at James and Grace both at the same time. I know how we can utilize that arrangement. Let's hear it, Angela. James replies. Yes, what are you thinking? Grace softly adds. When we hear of something, anything new of its kind, whether it be medicine, forensics, or scientific inventions, or accomplishments of any kind, we send out a travel team as far as necessary to the ends of the earth if it takes it. Then we pay whatever it takes, or trade our own technology, if need be, in order to acquire it. That's a wonderful idea, Grace says while reaching across the table and putting her hand over Angela's. James picks up where Angela left off. From now on, we will have the latest the world has to offer. So, you're with us then, Angela? Please say that you are. And remember, we still have the one thing on our side that no one else has. What is that, James? Angela asked. He stands up, dropping the newspaper onto the table. We have the security of healthfulness and youthfulness. The white locks of age will never interfere with our progress like it has with so many other great men and women. We will be able to preserve and add to our achievements unlike any before us. This facility will act as a sort of memory storage where we can harvest the most phenomenal achievements of man, keeping them in a safe place while we build on them. We will warehouse all the latest, sharpest technological breakthroughs right here in Tallahassee. And we will have a team of inventors of our own. Without old age to stop us, the sky won't even be a limit. The universe will be ours. I ask again, Angela, are you with us? Say that you are. I didn't expect you to take me so seriously when I first walked in this morning. Still, I don't want you to get me wrong. I'm glad that you did. It's exciting to hear you talk this way. I do think you might be going a little overboard with your projections, though. You can sit down now and relax. I'm still unequivocally with you, James, and with you, Grace. I never was going, or even thinking about leaving. I just didn't know where to go from here. James sits back down next to her. And now, Miss Gall. And now, Mr. Jenkins, you've laid out the path for me. His face briefly subsides into its former relaxed state, appearing less intense and more cheerful. I must admit I felt quite impulsive there for a while, but I'll be darned if I didn't mean every word. You always mean what you say, darling. Grace kissed his cheek. It's why you had our emphatic attention. It was like we were being roused by the distant blow of a trumpet. I concur with your wife, James, and I have another idea that I think you need to hear. Please, Angela, do continue. I'm in the mood for more. Grace is too. Aren't you, dear? I'm all ears. Go on. I want to hear. This man Solomon is watching you. Watching all of us. With good reason. since he's the inventor of the formula and left you the keys to finding it. He's given you leadership of this region of the Earth. How the regeneration process develops here is largely up to you, which is a great privilege. It's time that it moves forward also, and I think I know the basis for its foundation. You've so much property here in Tallahassee. Why don't you have architectural drawings made for future government expansion? I can help research the projections. You can have 10, 20, or upwards of 50 or more years of plant expansion needs. Having office space available as the need arises, you'll have a monopoly on all the future government buildings. I guarantee it will work because you own all the vacant land in this portion of the city. You already house practically all government agencies the federals have in Florida, and there's no need to stop there. We'll keep infiltrating the government with our people, especially the Secret Service. And we won't stop in Florida. Eventually we'll infiltrate the whole United States, and then Central and South America. In the future, we won't have to worry about confidentiality with our research. With the government involved in protecting us, there will never be an organization, now or in the future, that can find out our secret. The regeneration of people will be at our discretion, and we can speed it up dramatically when we see fit. Of course, we would need adequate facilities to do so, but over time, and with forward thinking, we will. I think Solomon would be pleased with this plan. You could encourage him to copy it, at least the government aspect of it, and use it in other regions of the world. By God, Angela, that's a brilliant plan. Tell her, Grace. Tell her what a brilliant plan it is. It's true, Angela. Your idea has struck gold. That night in front of her fireplace, Angela sat, thinking more about the future than the present. She was living a more real life among her thoughts than her actual surroundings. What would the evolution of her and James' grand plan be? The progress of technology would be its main support piece, and that technology was just starting to take flight. The invention of the car and plane were in the early stages. So too was steel and the building trade with huge dams, gigantic bridges, and enormous high-rise skyscrapers. Coney Island had the first escalator as an entertainment ride. The typewriter and telephone had been invented. The phonograph, the transformer, ironclad ships, combustion engines, the light bulb, the sewing machine. Famous inventors stretched across the world. Eli Whitney, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and Charles Goodyear. She sat comfortable in a cushioned rocking chair with the warmth from the fireplace touching her face, sending her into fantastic speculations. She thought herself to be moving outside of what had been a narrow circle. There seemed a transformation taking place inside her. She felt a strange tingling sensation ebb through her legs, and arms like some kind of physical presence was trying to make itself known. She dismissed it as too much excitement for one day, and indeed, as she did this, the tingling subsided. She had been nourished by an abundance of stimulating, influential fellowship, and thus had been filled with a sense of poetic hope for the future.
You have reached the end of Chapter 22 of the Fifth Pinnacle. Be sure to return for the last chapter of Book 1 in the Earth Chronicles by H. G. Shuler on YouTube.